to the Executive Outlook. Today, we are joined by Dr. David Marco, a leading expert in metadata management, AI governance, and data transformation. With over 60 successful implementations, numerous awards, and best selling books, Dr. Marco has been a driving force in the world of data governance. Welcome, David.
I am so happy to be here with you, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm glad it wasn't too long. That shows maybe too long of a career. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to talk about AI governance. I know that's going to be our focus today, and I'm just really looking forward to speaking to your audience.
Thank you so much. So let's hear from you about your journey. That what inspired you to be in this field of data and AI?
It's such a great question. I was working on a data warehousing project way in the early days, and I was an ETL architect, extract, transform, and load. I finished my work first, and they said, hey, we need somebody to work on the metadata piece, which I said, well, I'll do it. I'm happy to try. I started researching it. I found one book on it, and it wasn't all that helpful. Very few articles. And I thought, okay, this is something I can really try to bring thought leadership into. How should it work? And I think this is just such a great lesson to the people listening. Raise your hand. That was a long time ago. And let me tell you, I've not stopped raising my hand since. I'm actually working on AI governance at a massive federal agency. How did I get to do it? I met with the CDO every week. When it came up, I raised my hand. I said, I'll do it. It's a great career lesson to step up and be first. Empowerment over fear. That's what you want. And so for me, I just grew to love working with data. Most people who go into data management or data governance, it's almost never your first career. There's not a whole lot of people sitting in college saying, gosh, I think I want to do data governance. They probably don't even know what it means. However, when you start working in systems, and my background, which I love that you pointed out that I've done over 60 enterprise programs where I'm the lead guy. That's what I'm most proud of, more than the books, more than the awards, that I do this stuff in the real world. That's what I do. And it allows me to do wonderful podcasts like this and keynotes. I don't really have to prep them because you're living it every day. And I would suggest that in working with these systems, I do what bad data did to these applications. I know what it means to get the 2 a.m. phone call because your program crashed. And then you have to drive 90 minutes to downtown Chicago, go into a high rise, get there by 3:30, and then work all day to fix a problem in a system. I lived that for a number of years. And so it was easy to have a passion for making the data better. I knew what bad data did. And now with AI governance, it's so exciting to me because when you talk with companies who want to build large AI programs, the first thing that you hear from them, our data isn't ready. I've heard that. I'm sure you have too. I mean, you live this. Our data isn't ready. Well, that's a problem. And that's the problem that I've worked so much to solve. And it's why AI governance excites me so much, because now I can take all those data skills, apply it to AI. And now I get to do even more things like work with how you actually implement these massive AI systems. I actually used to program in AI. So it's been fun to kind of get back into it more. And what a great blessing it's been. So maybe that's probably a long-winded answer, but I saw that in some of the interviews you gave, you really want to try to help people grow their career and advance, which I love. I think that's why you should do one of these. So I want to give them a little bit of volunteer. You'd be shocked what can happen in your career.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so inspiring. So we talked about the 16 programs that you have run it for the enterprises and companies. I am very excited to hear some of the stories that how you have dealt with and what business impact it has created when we have solved those problems.
Superb question. So I could talk about building the FBI's first working counterterrorism data warehouse, but instead I'm going to go to a different massive hospital. You would know their name. Everybody knows their name. One of the top, probably 10 in the world, the elite of the elite. And they approached us and other companies to say, hey, we want to build an enterprise data warehouse for cancer analytics. So we are going to put the life of a human being on the line with these analytics. And we did what you're not supposed to do as a consulting company. We said, you're not ready to build that. Your data is poor. You need to get your metadata management right. What's metadata management? The technical backbone of data management. It gives you the who, what, when, where, how, and why of your data. If you don't have that, you have no control. Number two, you need good data governance so that we understand what this data, a precise definition, valid values, because if we don't have valid values, we don't have a rubric for evaluating data quality. And that was the third spoke of the foundation. And we said, hey, you're not ready to build a data warehouse. Let's do these things first. Do them right. And then we can build a data warehouse that's worthy of putting the life of somebody on the line. I would not build an application for something like that unless I had people who wanted to do it the right way and the ethical way. And needless to say, for some reason they accepted that proposal. They said, oh yeah, we do need to do that, which you never see. Typically your job's just to win the business, but we did it the right way. Long story short, it has won all kinds of awards. I'm sure find it on our website, ewsolutions.com. And we actually lowered mortality rates. And that's something that one day in 30 years when I retire, I'll look at that one so fondly, because you can actually say, hey, I contributed to helping people live longer, healthier lives. Yes, I love making money. I love things that increase revenue and decrease costs, but I don't think there's ever been one that's been more valuable. So that would be the one I would share. And you can do this. By the way, people will say, especially in data management, how do you give an ROI for that? Very easily. It's going to make your AI work. It's going to make your advanced analytics work. And that's the secret to your ROI, return on investment. So, great question. That's a fun memory for me.
Thank you so much. And, when it is making the impact, as you mentioned, that it has reduced the rate, right? And that's so inspiring that we should definitely do more projects like this, which will make impact, right? So I'm very excited to know that you mentioned about first, before we create the data warehouse, the first step is the metadata creation, right? So if anyone wants to start with metadata creation, so what should be the steps that they should follow? How much time does it take, and what should be the steps?
Number one thing I like to do with metadata management, I want to identify the KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics that we are going to take a baseline measurement on and then improve within our organization. I do everything based on metrics and KPIs. I never want somebody asking me, hey, we've invested X amount of dollars into this effort, and any of these efforts have governance, data governance, metadata management. These are not $10,000 initiatives. They cost far more than that. They are normally going to cost, if you're talking about a global 2000 company or a massive federal agency, it's going to be in the single digit millions over years to do it. So the way I like to start, those KPIs, whatever we're building needs to provide business value. First and foremost, if I'm going to do it in a federal agency, all agencies across the world have missions. Then we switch from business objectives to whatever the mission parameters might be. So just this is a crash course in defining world-class KPIs. So we're going to hit it pretty fast. So then what I'm going to do is when I understand where we're going at, maybe we want to improve data quality in a key application. Maybe what we want to do is a big thing. CDOs, chief data officers, want to reduce needless redundancy. We had a client, you can read about Micron Electronics, a Fortune 300 company that make semiconductors. You and I might have one in our computer as we're speaking right here. It was amazing. We implemented metadata management software, which, by the way, again, I'm crash coursing your audience. Remember this, I never have a company purchase only metadata management software. And I like to purchase software, and there's plenty of fine vendors that handle metadata management, data governance, data quality, and also AI governance. A lot of them have good beginning components. So you don't need 4 different pieces. So we implemented that software, scanned their ETL vendor's implementation. We found out 62% of their ETL jobs were either needlessly redundant or were feeding sources that are no longer used. We literally turned off almost 4,000 jobs. Talk about reducing strain on an IT department and lowering software costs, which is pretty nice too. So that's where I would start. KPIs, Pick the right software that spans those four areas I gave: metadata management, data governance, data quality, AI governance, and make sure it's right sized for your environment. If you follow me on LinkedIn, which I think everybody does, but if you don't, follow me on LinkedIn. I put out articles and videos on this stuff. What you want to do, get the right software in and then implement it properly. Get that foundation, because that's going to be seminal for whatever it is you do.
So we have been set up with the metadata, right? And we have been set up with this. What should be the next steps that we should be doing while setting up our data infrastructure?
That metadata management software is important. And because it also does data quality, guess what? You don't have to integrate a data quality tool into your environment. It's already integrated. And this is something, just knowing your background a bit, you understand how hard it is integrating software packages. My goodness, I have spent a decent portion of my life doing that. So once you do that, I also want to get in my data governance. And we're going to focus the effort on the big things, the CDEs, the critical data elements that you'll hear about. Key applications, mid-size. Sorry, I've been giving big examples. Let's bring this a little bit smaller. Mid-size manufacturing company, about 400 million in revenues annually. And what we did there was we implemented a software package that can handle all that stuff, but also data governance. So, which is the people processes. So we could actually establish for their key ERP system. They had one ERP system. The whole company ran off this thing. That's going to be our target. They were also implementing an HR, human resources application. So we targeted those too, because that's the hub of the organization. Focus on the big things. The little things you can work at later. Some of you may be familiar with Stephen Covey's famous big rocks theory, where worry about the big rocks and getting them in your bucket, not the little small stuff. Let's handle the big things, because it always comes back to that. I referenced the FBI earlier. That project, again, fun to work on, incredibly challenging. Because they get some intelligence on something and suddenly the whole organization changes. So it's almost like these waves, and we all know the hardest target to hit is a moving target. So how do you handle that? We identified the applications that they use the most frequently. And we said, let's have great analytics off it that target the mission. Let's make sure to scan that metadata. Let's make sure to have good data governance. Let's make sure to deal with data quality issues. And let's do these basic, because every time it changes, they're going to run into us. They're going to run right into what we've done. They may go by it, but then it's going to change and go right back into it. So I hope my little hand gestures make sense. So focus on the big things, the big rocks, and everything else will fall into place.
All right. So when we implement these things, right? So what are the biggest challenges that companies are facing right now in order to adopt the AI? Because there's a lot of fear also in the market that will I get the right results? What will be the accuracy, right? So how to handle such scenarios?
Oh, goodness. You're just singing my song right now. I call it the chasm. Where we're at today in AI is sky-high expectations on one end. Why? Because we all have ChatGPT. Most of us don't pay a thing. And those of us who are really technical are paying $25 a month to use the thing. And so executives see like, wow, this can do so much, that for $25 a month. So number one, they think it's not expensive to build AI. And that's not true. It does cost money. People don't realize OpenAI, they're losing almost $1 billion a year on that tool. How can they do it? Microsoft put $23 billion into them. I don't know about your company. Microsoft's not putting $23 billion into my company and probably not into yours. So we need to make money on this stuff. So number one, we have overinflated expectations based on what they're experiencing. You brought up fear. Goodness, there's so much fear out there. First up, they think an AI application is from another planet. It's from something 1,000 years in the future. They don't understand it's still input, process, output. That's what IT systems have always been. It's probably what they always will be. Yes, there are some unique aspects to AI applications that make them more challenging, but they're only challenging because we're still learning as an industry. We're at the beginning point, the early adoption point. And so we have overinflated expectations, a ton of fears, you've said. And companies are screaming, our data isn't ready. Mix that with, there's not a lot of proven best practices. We have some wonderful standards emerging like OTel, if you open telemetry, if you're looking for a standard for testing your agentic applications. So things are emerging, but workforces are still learning. Software companies are growing their stacks and getting better and better. It's going to take some time. So you have this chasm of early adopters, and I can tell you how this will go because I lived it in data warehousing and analytics. We're going to get smarter. We're going to get better. Companies will understand it more. There'll be better standards. NIST is a wonderful standard. NIST AI Risk Management 1.0, wonderful standard. You don't have to do it all. Just do subset based on your use case. You can do these things. And we will see, I believe, in a year or two, it's going to explode the way data warehousing did, where we will walk into companies in 2 or 3 years and AI applications will be ubiquitous within those organizations. And I don't mean just chatbots. I'm talking far more advanced.
So it is maturing as because it just came into the market right now, right? And people are getting the reality check that, okay, what we can do, what we cannot do, and making their infrastructures ready. And then once it will be matured, then you are saying that it will be on boom and like what the data field does, the similar things that will gonna.
Yes, you see people who really follow these kind of trends talking how AI will be the largest money revenue generator in the history of the world. And I can see that because data warehousing, I remember days when it was hard to get somebody to build a little independent data mart. What's a dimensional model? What's a star? What's a fact table? That seems weird. And same thing today. I mentioned OTel. Most people don't even know what that is. Most people don't know what RAG means. And a token, what does that mean? Do I use that to get onto a bus? No, there's all these concepts. We will mature. A lot of people are working hard to grow and establish best practices. It's really a push for me. You don't get to see my desk, the stand-up desk, but I have stacks of stuff that I'm working on AI governance. I can't wait to what I'm going to bring into the marketplace to try to help us grow and be able to implement these applications safely, efficiently, and something that helps the organization and the people within the organization and their customers. That's exciting because we can do things. So I remember years ago trying to build automated analytics. That's what we used to call them. We have certain formulas in there, certain things we're looking at. It's basically remedial AI, trying to make decisions for a company. The stuff we can do with AI, we're able to be far more granular, far more detailed. So it will happen. I don't think it's if, it's when. I don't think it'll be long before we get out of this chasm where fear starts fading away and we get into implementation. What I'm hearing from companies, they want to spend 2026 on strategy and foundation. And 2027, they want to start implementing things. That's what we're hearing from the market.
So if we mentioned about the KPIs in our previous discussion, that should be the starting point. If any organization wants to see, so what should be the first 3 KPIs they should start evaluating to make a business impact?
So number one thing I like to do if I'm working at a commercial organization, I want to look at their business objectives. Every company has, what are the things you want to achieve? Greater innovation, lower costs, more revenues. The CEO will do this. The board of directors and CEO, they're going to publish something. I want and need to know what that is because I want, whether we're doing AI governance and AI application or doing data management, I want to help achieve those. That's what I want. In addition, I want to go into concepts like I want to speak to other executives like chief of sales, if it's a consumer products company. What's important to you? What's hurting you? So I'll give you one, a manufacturing company. I don't want to give too many details, but it was bad. Their new product innovation was terrible. Bottom rung. In fact, you could argue they have not had a successful new product launch in 15 years. That's staggering and problematic. So what we focused on is why, specific to them, what is causing the problem? And what did we find? Data related. They couldn't come up with good data of the designs of their products. They never knew who did the design. They couldn't find the drawings. And those were all part of the solution. But I want to get to your 3. I'll use the hospital one. Again, cancer analytics, that was the theme. That's what they wanted to get better. Mortality rate, which I mentioned, that was huge. can we lower the mortality rate? Meaning mortality rate is death. So can we have less people die based on the type of cancer they have? How far along are they? Where they're at in the process? Can we lower that? And we work. Actually, all of these were successful. Another key metric in that implementation was we wanted to lower hospital time. How much time are they physically in the hospital? And so really key things with that is we were able to use demographics, specific. So I'm the architect of the whole thing. Did I come up with that? No, we worked with these genius doctors who really understood cancer. I asked them, what do you need to lower? If you can give me this info, this, and this, I can lower this. I know we can do better. He's a world-class expert in not one form of cancer, two forms of cancer. So I asked, it was simple as that. And then we made sure to provide clean data, well formatted to them so that they can do their job. The last thing was protocols. They really wanted to study, hey, when we give this drug or that drug, how did the patient, what happened? What was the outcome based on all these things, based on age, weight, past health history, all these things. And so we were able to better prescribe the right drugs for the right situation. And again, I'm not the guy who came up. I asked the experts what they needed. So it was really cool. So those are three for you right there.
Thank you so much for sharing. Like, if we are starting any project, any initiative in AI, so what is the biggest thing which we can avoid from the starting and we can take care of so that it cannot become a big problem at the later?
So in the United States, we have a big holiday called Thanksgiving, and we make big turkeys and tons of food. And you have to have a plan and a strategy for Thanksgiving. You can't eat the whole turkey in one sitting. It's not possible. There's so much food. So I have a strategy, and I'm going to take a small amount of everything, and I'm going to go back for seconds to what I really like. AI should be just like that. Don't try to boil the ocean, especially in your early initiatives, because you will make mistakes. Plan for the mistakes. Be ready for the mistakes. If that happens, you're going to make those mistakes. Pick something that's reasonable, that is not boiling the ocean, use case driven, ones that you really think will be valuable to the company, and that you're not trying to do something that's incredibly difficult and risky. So then as you proceed in that use case, number one, message to every AI developer in our audience. Don't scan every system in your organization. Just don't. In my experience, not only what I've seen, but in working with some of my colleagues who do this too for a living, building AI applications, the more data you scan doesn't make your application better. In fact, what we've seen in the field, it makes it worse. The accuracy goes down. And guess what? It makes sense to me as being a data guy, because not all of our systems have the same quality of data. You put in your energy for the really high end, your systems of record, scan those. The little garbagey ones that you have sitting on the side, which who knows how the data is formatted, what people have slammed in there, avoid those. Limit your scope. Scan the systems you need and then evolve them over time. So I want to reduce my scope, simplify, understand we're going to get smarter as time goes on. That's my advice of where to begin. Use case driven, small, focus on.
So we talked about the use case for data, right? But we didn't discuss about the AI use case. So do you want to share some use cases around that?
Absolutely. So I did a webinar a while ago on just how you build use cases. And so I have a formula that I go to. And I'll just kind of spit it out. I just beautiful graphic, but I'll just share it verbally. Number one, I mentioned start with the business objectives. What are the 3 to 5 objectives that company has? If it's a federal agency, start with the mission. What is the mission of the agency? Those are going to be the number one most important thing. Second thing, pain points. What have we actually experienced here within this organization that we know needs to be fixed? I'll give you an example. He was the top accountant in a bank. So this guy had never been outside. I don't know if he ever saw the sun. So you're working a lot of hours. And I asked him, do you trust the data in the analytics that you use for decision making? And he looked at me. And this is a direct quote. The data that we have is the best that we have. And if it is directionally correct, and if it's correct, it gives us a directionally correct view of the company. I've never forgotten. That's a word for word quote. Amazing. The data that we have is the best that we have, not a ringing endorsement. And if it's calculated the same way every time, what does he really mean? He means I have no idea how it's calculated. I don't have a clue how it's calculated. But if those two things that I have no knowledge about are true, then it gives us a directionally correct view, meaning it's horribly inaccurate, even in a best case scenario. He's using that data to make strategic decisions about the organization. That's a pain point. He's in pain. You can see it. That's something, if we fix it, talk about punching your ticket to success. So look for those pain points. I had another organization, a global 300 financial services company. They had a situation where they had data that was going to go to the SEC in the United States for any bank that does business here. All of them will know who they are. And that data was about to go out. And they had a data steward who looked at the data right before it went out. And she said, there's a problem in here. If that data would have went out, it is estimated they would have lost 18% of their market cap. This Fortune 300, because of the negative publicity, they would have violated multiple SEC rules. And it would be the kind of violation that gets you on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, not in a good way, in the wrong way, the one you don't want. And what's interesting is if she was on vacation that week, the file goes out. She actually was on vacation the following week. They missed it by 2 days. Devastation. And everybody knew this story. Those real pain points. That's what I target next. So business objectives, pain points. Number 3, ways to increase revenue. I had a company I spoke to yesterday. They have an interest in monetizing their data. They would like to do that. They'd like to learn how to do that. That's something I've had the opportunity to do at multiple places. Well, you get into, okay, how do we see that happening? What can your sales force do? We can make the data clean. We can fix all that stuff, but what do they do? So ways to increase revenue. Number 4, it's the one where most professionals start. They start at number 4. They forget the top 3 because I'm giving it in priority, reducing costs. Identifying duplication. Most companies, if you're at a global 2000 company, 60 to 80% of your analytics are out of date and could be scrapped and nobody's using it. Just to make you aware. And I've spent no time, well, maybe some of you I may have. I'm seeing this consistently. Let's get rid of all that old stuff. Let's reduce the strain, reduce the duplication. I gave you another story of a company. We scanned their ERP system, identify their PII, personally identifiable information. Very sensitive topic. And I think you have a lot of people in your audience, like people I speak to, GDPR, very important. We found out that PII was being duplicated in people's personal databases and a little customized stuff 7 times more than what was in the ERP system. And their head of security, when I asked, what controls do you have on your PII? I had controls. I said, how do you define PII? Most people cannot define it. They have no idea how to define it. Because if you look at GDPR and CCPA, they have different definitions. So how do you resolve that? So I'll know based on the answer, did they really do any work? He was like, no, I don't know. You're just hoping you do. So as much as I knew it was going to be bad, I didn't know we'd have 7 times. So if we had 100 gigabytes of PII sitting in the ERP system that everybody used, we had over 700 sitting in customized databases, applications we don't even know what they are, sitting on people's laptops. And that was only SQL Server that we scanned. So that's the kind of stuff. Reducing costs, reducing risk is big. And then my last one, my 5th piece, is be creative. The second I think I've figured out every way to define ROI or metrics, I'll find a new one. So don't be afraid to be creative as long as it helps the organization.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It was the insights which you have shared are really valuable, and you are an inspiration for all the professionals into data management and AI governance. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today.
And thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to talk to you. I've enjoyed it and be happy to come on whenever you'd like. This was a ton of fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much.